Welcome to Future Talks. My name is Sturesson, founder of Resting, a C-suite consultancy company with the tagline Advice from the Future. We're trying to explore issues and opportunities for the future. Today, I have the honor to have Leif Edvinsson here in the studio for the third time, exploring future knowledge type of things. And we have been discussing the last weeks, different topics, and very many things has been about knowledge navigation. And in that navigation, it was very clear to me that you said we need navigation points, and we need to understand crossroads in our working lives. So we now try to ask you, Leif, about how should we look upon navigation points, taking us from here to the future?
Well, we have to have the courage to move into the future. But if you see it as a kind of metaphor, it's a wave. You are surfing on the wave into the future, which means that it's not one point, where at least it's extremely temporary. Mm-hmm. And to be able to design what is the point then, you have to measure altitude, latitude and longitude. Altitude, the height, latitude, the relative benchmark, and then the longitude, which is yesterday and tomorrow.
That's three dimensions.
Yep.
So it's a 3D perspective.
Yep.
On when we have knowledge navigation as the theme in our discussions in the boardrooms. And by the way, do we think that we have enough 3D dimension discussions and topics in our boardrooms? What do you think?
No, we are mainly focusing the results of last quarter.
So historical facts on finance.
Short term.
Short term, instead of long-term findings and facts of innovation for the future.
Right.
So if we take that as the trampoline for the coming conversation here, what would you say is the basis for innovation?
The basis for innovation is to give a good future for our next generation.
That's the driving force.
Yep.
Motivation.
Yep.
How many generations? 1, 2, 3, how many?
Probably around somewhere around 7 plus.
7 plus generations.
Yes.
Long-term perspective.
Right.
Is it possible to really grasp and to anticipate and to imagine the realities in that context? What do you think?
Well, you can look at some societies like Singapore, who once were suffering from being a drug harbor with a lot of crime and a lot of problems, and much more than we see in some societies of today. Mm. And they got out of it. Mm. And to some extent it was the same with Malaysia. So you can actually navigate out of the mess by having all the facilities and the tools that we have today, from cyber dimensions to health and life science. And
this maybe also means, as you said, we need courage.
Yep.
These political leaders in Malaysia and in Singapore and elsewhere, they need to have courage, the guts to say no,
yep,
yes, no, yes. So that's a kind of a ping pong. There's a crossroad. How should we do to deal with these things? And let me also then ask you about. There's a lot of emerging technologies. We see it all. It's big data. It's blockchain, Internet of Things. And we can go on and on with these different technologies. But what do you really think is needed to apply all this kind of AI, or whatever we talk about, for the future? What do we need?
Wisdom.
Wisdom. Explain. Elaborate on that.
Wisdom is actually the context where you apply all these new technologies and the information and the weak and strong signals for your navigation. And the wisdom is full of interesting historical cases, like when Columbus was trying to sail to India.
Yeah.
He missed India, but he called it West Indies to save his face.
Yeah. So that's innovation.
Yes, that was innovation.
Redefining realities,
yeah,
or redefining future maybe, yeah, as well. So will that mean that I mean, sometimes I've been thinking, like 100 years ago, it was said it's an innovation to put an iron shoe on a horse, so the horse could move and work in the soil and and drag the plow and all these things. And now I learned 2 years ago, a Swedish Olympic winner in horse riding, his innovation was to take off the iron shoe from the horse, so it could jump more easily, more agile, more quicker. Will this means that the time we live in and what's around us, what was an innovation before, it's not an innovation today. It's just vice versa, and things goes back and forth. Could it be an innovation maybe in 10 years from now we get a new kind of material on the horseshoe? Or what do you think about these things coming back and forth like a pendulum on a clock?
Definitely, and we need to take the opportunities as they emerge, and that is sailing or navigation. You follow the tide and say, now it's time for a new forge of a new type of horseshoe. That is more like a modern Adidas shoe than the old metal one. And then the horse will run like it's barefoot.
So how will we then put a new Adidas shoe on a horse, including a chip in the sole, and then we can measure all the jumps and the moves of the body of the horse, and then we get the latest AI algorithm for how to really speed up the jump.
Excellent.
How could we take this into a company producing fruit, whatever? How do we learn?
Well, you can see what is fruit then, and fruit is probably could be regarded as a lifesaver. You eat it and you survive, etc. And it's full of nutritions. How do you extract the nutritions at what temperature and what kind of processing, and how do you clean it, etc. There is so much that we can apply modern technology to see the value of a fruit.
So that means if we go on with this fruit metaphor, fruit needs to be fresh. It tastes better when it's fresh. So my question to you would be, is there an expiry date or best before consumption of knowledge, just as we have for fruit?
Excellent question. And that's why we in the industrial society developed the model of retirement. So you recruit, you consume the employees, and then you put them into the garbage bin and call it retirement.
So how that's to me it sounds and looks very stupid.
And that's what we see people are demonstrating against that in France right now.
So that probably you are on the edge of your own future, because you have all the experience and knowledge which have given you wisdom up till today. And how do we apply that in today's society? Because you're not on a retirement. I mean, in one way you probably get some salary from the state, but the way you live is you're producing knowledge. How should we utilize that enormous force and power of the old people for tomorrow? What is your recipe?
I think it's extremely important. We have a tremendous deficit here in our way of organizing the knowledge and the skill of labor force in Europe. And as you know, we have been talking about upskilling and reskilling the labor force of Europe. And we have it already. But we need to apply and install some new tools for that to happen. And that is an organizational innovation. Why should it be that we are working 6 hours or 12 hours, or could we do it in 2 hours? Perhaps sometimes we can. So therefore, the whole paradigm of the work life needs to be re-paradigmed.
So could we then think about to make this kind of I would call it a knowledge dance between different stakeholders and between different generations maybe? And how could we make it, because I think there's a kind of very low speed, or call it low frequency, in the exchange of knowledge between generations. How can we speed up the frequency, and how can we decrease the friction about not really, collaborating?
Or how could we increase the friction?
Okay, tell us.
Well, because friction is heat.
Yes.
It's energy.
Yeah.
So what they have, some of the architects working on this have found out that if you have a corridor, which is in most cases designed to be straightforward, no blockages, etc., then you don't get the interaction in the corridor.
Yeah.
So therefore they have started to put in blocks.
All right.
In the corridor.
Knowledge blocks.
Exactly.
Knowledge breaks.
Yeah, knowledge breaks to get another friction in between people. And as you know, the coffee machine is one of those.
Yeah. So that's to increase relationship, increase dialogue, increase exploring together.
Yeah.
So so this to me gives a new perspective of friction, because people are so often afraid about friction when you get you think stupid question, but that's maybe the most important, to get a real good question.
Yep.
And now you have a mental tennis or ping pong or whatever you call it. So you need to allow that friction to happen.
And think about the cinnamon bun. You meet around a round table and take a cinnamon bun and a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Then you have a positive friction.
Yeah. So we need there to discern between negative and positive friction, because too much friction means we get stuck.
Yep.
And I think, by the way, that this word, I would say, I think it's a word skill. We need a skill to be in the right mood of positive friction. And I learned from my former colleague in PwC, Lauren Probst, that in his book, Reskilling and Upskilling for the Future, that the word skill comes from Icelandic, Norwegian, Swedish language. And it literally means the power of discernment, to separate between stupidity, even functional stupidity, and, you said it, Leif, wisdom. Yeah. So how could we energize the existing generations today to say, let's have a healthy friction? If it's too stuck, let's put some oil on the floor so we can, easier move. Yep. If it's too much oil, let's have some gravel on so we get the right balance. So how do we, practically speaking, working here together? What do you think?
We have to play.
We have to play.
We have to play much more. And experiment.
So work is to play.
Yeah, and how much of that is happening in the boardroom?
That's a good question.
Too little.
Too little, yeah.
And how much is happening in a classroom? Yeah. Probably too little as well. Yeah. But it's improving. So therefore we have to invite a collaboration with the architects to find the new ways of positive friction. Yeah.
And that could also maybe give us an idea about how much what is the density of different interactions? Is it like a lot of empty spaces of just air, or is it highly a great new composition with new ingredients of knowledge units which are putting it together like a new innovation for the future? And what would you say about the need for innovation from today? I mean, we have all these digital technologies, but we also need to have, that's high tech, but I think we need low tech. And I hear what you say is about relationship-based interaction and friction. So what kind of innovation would you say is the most important for the future?
Salt.
What?
Salt.
Salt. Why salt?
Because it's a conservative as well as a spice.
All right, and it keeps the food healthy and not stable and not going to be rotten.
Have much more salt in the organizational system.
So that means that maybe you and the two of us here needs to act as a can of salt on the food to give it more spice and to preserve it. With that mean we need to think about how we produce, share, store and distribute knowledge. Which could be
salt.
Or salt.
You know, salt was one of the most valuable ingredients in some parts of the world many years ago. Actually. Okay. They were trading with the salt. Mm-hmm. But now we know that salt also have a negative impact on the health.
Negative impact?
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's increasing the blood pressure.
All right.
So therefore, you have to balance with modern instrument.
Yeah.
And then you can put a little device here that is measuring the blood pressure
Okay.
instantly.
Wow.
And then you connect it to the mobile phone.
Yeah.
And then it tells you that now you have too much blood pressure. So calm down,
All
take
right.
it easy,
So
change the rhythm.
we calm down, we change the rhythm, we get the right pace, and that means probably we need to play more, as you said.
Yeah.
So let's play more. And you said work is a kind of a play. So what is then work? Yes, it's play, but work is also to do something for someone. And sometimes you get paid as well. But we serve community, we serve in our families, we serve in school, we serve in our companies, and we can have it I would say a good angle on the mouth. You used to say Happy Monday, and Monday morning when you call me. I think that's very important.
It is. And that's why the definition of a job has to be articulated. We have the old job interpretation. We have the traditional labor function, which is probably coming from the economics, where you split up the whole paradigm.
Yeah.
I do think it's more important to talk about value creation.
Value creation, yeah.
So how much value creation have you done this week or today or this year?
Yeah. And that's maybe give us an idea about how important it is to not just think about what we call the common denominator about different problems,
Excellent.
but to think about how do we multiply value.
And that is in the nominator.
That's in the denominator. It could
Not the
accelerate. It could accelerate.
Yeah, you have nominator and denominator.
Yeah.
So you accelerate, as you say.
So maybe this is the most important skill for the future.
Yep.
To
Speed
go into
up.
this dimension and speed it up. And I learned from the same report with Mr. Lauren Probst in PwC, there was a definition when we worked future of knowledge or future of industry in Europe. And one conclusion was, in Europe, we are over-educated but under-skilled. So I think what we're talking about here is a new skills, some new skills, which is about how do we act as persons, as leaders, as human beings, energizing the crowd, energizing people we work with, being the right proportion and portion of salt, and how we think we should talk and work together, and expecting maybe a great future.
We will, and that's the spicing of the future. To spice the future so we get a good smell, a good rhythm, and a happy future.
So that means without future, people will perish. We need visions and we need dreams. So thank you so much, Leif, for coming here.
My pleasure.
And we thank you all for listening into this conversation about knowledge innovation. And we will come back with a new Future Talks. Take care, all the best. Bye for now. And happy future.
Very good.